I'm David Liggett with Data Center Hawk, and I am here with Chris Downie, CEO of Flexential, and we're talking about the data center industry next. Chris Downie, thank you so much for being here. We're really excited that you're here and going to talk about the data center industry with us, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's awesome to be here.
You have had a very interesting couple years. You came on to to be CEO of Peak 10 a couple years ago, and in the process began an acquisition of ViaWest to create Flexential. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Before we start and talk about Flexential, one of the things that I really love doing is hearing about the background of the people that we sit with. We're sitting with industry leaders, those that have really shaped the data center industry over the last 15, 20 years. And I would definitely put you in that category, your role at Telex, even before that from a financial background and some of the things that you were doing. But just give us an overview of your background and how it's really positioned you to be successful as the CEO of Flexential.
Sure. So, really, I spent the first 10 years of my career in investment banking, and in that role, spent a lot of time basically raising private equity and debt capital for communications and technology companies. And so whether it was an early stage company that needed capital for growth, or it was an entrepreneur that was pursuing a nation technology, not to date myself, but those entrepreneurs were thinking about things like cellular and towers and all those sectors were in their relative infancy back then. So in that role, I got to learn a lot about capital formation, but I also got dangerous in communications and internet related technologies, and at least enough to know that I was very intrigued by it and wanted to learn a lot more about it. So spent 10 years doing that, and then had the opportunity to jump into the operating domain with a startup telecommunications company, a CLEC, if you're familiar with the acronym. That was in 2000, which was, that company had all the right ingredients from management to money, but the one ingredient it didn't have was timing, because as you know, in the early 2000s, everything was got to be a bit messy in communications. So from there, I did a bunch of CFO, COO type roles, really across a various set of different technologies in the communications domain, and then ultimately landed at Telex in 2007.
So what was that like when y'all first started? You started small and grew it. How did that go?
Yeah, so it was, I think, in those early days, the concept of a data center was a relatively new word. Equinix was certainly the largest of a very small bunch, but they were very early stage in their own right. Telex was a bit of a bootstrapped company that kind of came out of the whole telco domain, just because they were a calling card company, but what they had secured was very strategic real estate, which ultimately is core to the whole data center value proposition. And that real estate was in some pretty interesting connectivity-centric environments in New York and then in Atlanta. And so, but in those early days, it was $50 million in revenue, and just barely scraping by and trying to figure out what the business model needed to be for long-term success, and then how do you scale it, and so there's a lot of kind of early figuring it out, if you will.
Yeah. So you're approximately a year into the rebranding of the company, Flexential, and bringing these two companies together, which I think is a gigantic task.
Sure.
What are you most proud of? When you think about the last year or so and seeing these two companies come together, what stands out to you as just progress that you've made, and what makes you proud?
Sure. Well, it's hard to believe we're 9 months into it already. It kind of feels like we just closed, but there's been a tremendous amount of activity in the last 9 months. But what I'm really most proud about is the team, quite frankly, just because the transaction was a big transaction. In a lot of ways, it was new for everyone. While the companies were pretty similar in terms of their legacies, their products, their services, the new platform that we created really
Yeah.
presented a whole host of new challenges
Yeah.
to the organization
Yeah.
across the country. And so, it was great to see the team, embrace the challenge and see the opportunity.
Sure.
And quite frankly, lock arms with our teammates for, what we all view as a great opportunity going forward.
We were, AP and I were talking before about, I was telling her, there's probably no other companies that were as well suited obviously from a geography perspective.
Sure.
It's very unique that obviously Peak 10's growth was on the East Coast and really focused in that area. You had Via West on the West Coast and kind of the central parts of the country. So just from a geography standpoint, I thought that was really interesting and
Sure.
very complementary.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a lot of ways, they were mirror images of each other.
Yeah.
And because they didn't compete, the companies tended to collaborate on things over time, not necessarily on the deal front, but on the back office front. What is best practice? And because they were similar in scale as well, that collaboration was very, very relevant. So, I look at it as very serendipitous, if not, lucky for me. I had certainly made the decision to jump back into the industry. I'd taken about a year off, and I'd worked with GI Partners before, who was our sponsor. But Peak 10, I viewed as really a nice platform to do some exciting things. And then Shazam, the Via West opportunity comes up, and it really, it's very rare to have the opportunity to create a national platform in such a short period of time, just given what that entails in terms of the number of markets that you need. And so that's really the most exciting thing is that we do now have a national platform, and it's we just have to make everybody aware that we're here and open for business, if you will, in that scale. Yeah,
as a leader of the company, where do you find you're focusing your time right now? What do you feel like are the biggest challenges that you're trying to get ahead of for the company?
Well, a few focus areas. Number one, growth, and what I mean by that is our go-to-market has really shifted very rapidly from being local to regional to now national. And so, we've got 41 data centers, 21 markets, and really tremendous capacity that is highly relevant to a whole host of demand sets that neither legacy company were necessarily in front of before because they couldn't go west of the Mississippi or east of the Mississippi. And now, we have capacity stretching from Hillsborough up in Portland all the way down to Fort Lauderdale, and there's really a conversation, not a conversation that we can't have, or a conversation that we can't have as it relates to demand sets. But quite frankly, we haven't been in front of them, so we need to. Our biggest challenge is that go to market, but really the awareness associated with the go to market as well, and because in a lot of ways, demand has not necessarily thought of either legacy company from having national capabilities, and so and it goes well beyond just the breadth of the portfolio because we have really a suite of services that we bring, and I'd say more than most in terms of colo, cloud, managed solutions, and professional services. We like to think we have more utilities under one roof than most of our peers in the sector.
I think it's true. Yeah,
and then we have network resources too. We have a fairly tremendous network backplane that supports the portfolio that not many folks are probably aware of. And so really that goes back to your question, which is what am I most focused on? It's awareness. Just making sure that people know who Flexential is, appreciate the national the national breadth and the capacity that we're working with, but the whole host of utilities that we bring to the value proposition.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think, as you look at data center users, your role at Telex as CEO for a long period of time, now your role here at Flexential, you've seen data center needs and companies with their IT infrastructure requirements for a long period of time. How have you seen those change, over the last 10 to 15 years? What did the customer look like back then? What does the customer look like now?
Sure. Well, I mean, things have definitely matured, and I think the customer's gotten a lot smarter and a lot more selective. I think the good news is there's a lot more customers than there were 10 years ago. But the internet startups of 10 years ago are giants today, and they they know exactly what they want to consume, where they want to consume it, and they're consuming in scale. So, you really need to keep pace with those folks. And, the new startups of today are certainly taking the page out of that playbook, and having a kind of a head start, if you will, relevant to where those folks started. So, so I'd say the customers is they're not talking to you if you don't have the right facility in the right location. They're really more focused on, okay, what are the what are the options? What's the utility that you bring alongside that relationship, which will hopefully be for the rest of time. And a lot of that is clearly focused on network capability, ability to federate across various different platforms.
Yeah, I think the portfolio you all have now, and being able to serve clients, in multiple markets, I think it's almost an expectation that a company would have today, just based on their needs. It sounds like what you're saying is, hey, they're looking for us to help solve their problems. And we put it in well-constructed facilities, safe facilities. But the reality is, like, the services that we bring, co-location, cloud, retail or managed services, those type of things are really what we're using to help solve their problems. When you think about y'all's product set and what you're offering to the companies today, are you all focused on one of those more than the other? Sure. Are you seeing one of those grow, as you all obviously have cloud nodes in several of your facilities across the U.S.?
Yeah.
Are you seeing that become more and more of a conversation you're having with users today? What's that like today?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned before, we're working with 41 data centers. And, the data centers really, from our perspective, represent the home by which the customers can reside and then consume whatever utilities they figure out over time are most important to their applications or solutions. So, our core is really that data center and thus the co-location, and the interconnection related to that co-location that goes on within it. That being said, though, the utilities that we bring to bear in that environment are, I'd say, equally as important, although, getting the customer in our data center is sort of job number one. Co-location's roughly 73% of our business now. And so, just by numbers, it's the most significant. But then as you look at cloud, it's probably the most logical adjacency to that core, if you will. It's compute utility, it's infrastructure, and we have the ability to bring that to a customer solution fairly dynamically. Managed solutions is again related utilities, whether it's storage or managed OS or what have you, that are also in high demand. Although I'd say managed solutions, we're spending more time picking our spots in terms of what we do well. We don't necessarily want to bring something into our relationship with the customer that we're not good at. So and then professional services is actually something that I didn't have the opportunity to work with before, that I think really gives us the ability to differentiate our front end, if you will, our go-to-market with the customer. We have 60 advanced engineering resources. They're based in Denver, but they solve some of the more complicated IT problems that exist, from compliance to security, and a whole host of other dynamic issues. And so having that and being able to invest that on the front end with customers that are really, a lot of customers come and they have their designs, but they may not necessarily be battle tested. And so if we can get the customer to sort of accept more of that help on the front end, then I think ultimately their solution becomes a lot more meaningful and successful for them for the long term. And so I never had a team of professional resources like that to bring to bear in engagements. You always just were reacting to whatever the customer wanted. Now we can see what the customer wants and said, well, relative to what you're trying to accomplish, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Because we've got a team that can architect that for you, and then 4,200, which is our customer count, and I call those use cases across the country.
So 4,200 customers, some small, some large. How do you do your best to essentially craft your product set to meet those needs? Knowing that you have probably very small customer sets, and they have others that have very large requirements.
Sure.
How do you go about making sure that you can not only meet their needs today, but also down the road?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a diverse group. You know,
Yeah.
it's we have I think in each of our primary verticals, which are technology and healthcare and retail and manufacturing, we have some of the largest logos in the world that you'd recognize. And so once you get those customers in, you obviously want to keep them very happy for a very long period of time, and they've got some fairly significant demands on resources, and obviously as the customer gets smaller, I'd say some of those demands become less intense, and so for us it's about allocating the right resource to really what are the day-to-day requirements of each group of those customers. The customer experience is kind of the first pillar of our strategy for 2018 and beyond, and making sure that again that we align the resources to the requirements, because some of those requirements are on a daily and hourly basis, but some are some are a lot less intense.
Yeah, it's good. When you think about the new Flexential brand and the 21 markets that you're in today, how do you make sure that you're continuing to grow in the areas that you're in currently, but also expand to where your customers want to be?
Sure. Well, I mean, that's if there's one thing that keeps me up at night is just making sure that we have capacity.
Yeah.
So 65 to 70% of our organic, month over month revenue growth comes from our existing base. So, there is a commitment that we make to our customers once they're there that we're going to always be able to meet their growing needs. So we're constantly evaluating where we need that capacity. Right now we're in more top 50 MSAs in the U.S. than anyone else, and so we've had definitely a more of a tier 2 market strategy. But we are in some tier 1 markets, and now that we've put these two companies together, we certainly have the scale to pursue more tier 1 markets. But as I think about growth and capacity, I think number one, we always have to make sure that we've got capacity in our existing markets, and so that's where we've made arguably 2 decades of investment from both legacy companies, and we have a growing customer base that's expecting us to continue to grow with them. And so I remind the Flexential team all the time, because everybody gets real excited about a new market and where are we going next. But in a lot of ways, a lot of our opportunity is really where we've established our footprints today. But that being said, we acquired and opened up a new facility in Philadelphia in November of last year, which was a great step for us further into the Northeast. There are several markets that, and these are the tier 1 markets that we're not in, that I think are fairly obvious. New York, New Jersey, Ashburn, Chicago. We're not in California right now, but I like to think we strategically have it surrounded. But so those are very logical for us. So in terms of growth, it'll be a lot more of the same, but also where do we need to expand to be even more strategically relevant to our customers.
That's good. And actually, it's not on here, but as you think about the capital needed to do that, and just the capital in the industry today, obviously that's changed to an extent as I think the data center industry has become more relevant and people understand, investors understand more about what the industry is and what it supports. But do you feel like there is enough capital in the market today to be able to serve the needs of that companies have and help companies like yours expand?
Sure.
And how's that changed over the last 5 or so years?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the capital that's attracted to this business now is greater than it's ever been in the past, and so that doesn't necessarily mean that the requirement to make good, smart business decisions has changed. And so I think there's been a clear recognition that the demand sets are still in the early stages as relates to data center consumption, all the great reasons for it. So I think people can have a lot of conviction that there's a lot of go forward opportunity. But I also think fundamentally it's real estate. It's I like to say that the data center is a 20+ year value proposition, and once you put it in the ground, as long as you execute appropriately, it's gonna offer a tremendous return. And I think the last decade has certainly proved that out. There have been a number of our public peers that have demonstrated that they can maintain a strong growth profile and continue to deploy capital in a very efficient and high return manner, in particular relative to other sort of real estate centric investment alternatives.
Yeah. So under the new Flexential brand, how do you anticipate, as you all do deliver new facilities in different markets, what will that look like? You all have some kind of flagship facilities in certain markets, and that's, as I think probably the Peak 10 and Via West brand was growing. And so now under this new umbrella, what will that look like? How will you look to really, build facilities that attract users?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the great thing is we're working with fairly tremendous capacity today. We've got across those 41, data centers, we've got about 3 million square feet, and we're only 60% utilized today. Okay. I'd say both companies were in fairly significant expansion mode prior to the combination. We have what we refer to as Gen 4 facilities today that really come out of the gates with about 150,000 sellable capacity. And examples of that are the new facility that we have here in Denver, which we refer to as Com Park, but we just opened up a 90,000 square foot wing there that has, tremendous capacity, but also tremendous power densities. Hillsborough up in Portland is another example of that. In August, we'll be opening up another 90,000 square foot wing there. But in Vegas and Minneapolis and here in Texas, we've got similar capacities. So, I think we'll continue to build in that format because I think it is the kind of the format of the future, if you will. Although I think you do have to scale your investments relative to how much demand is in one market.
You bet.
Some of our tier 2 markets just won't consume that much capacity, so you don't want to plunk down a massive facility. And I don't want to pick on a specific market, but that being said, we've been able to do very similar kind of I'd say same redundancies and power resiliencies in smaller form factors that that make sense in other second-tier markets.
And I think that's one of the things when I think back on the space and the industry and the way that I think the fact that data center operators have become much more reasonable with their approach of delivering capacity. I think for the investment world, I'll have conversations helping people understand that when an announcement is made that 80 acres has been acquired and 1 million square feet will be built, that's not happening on day one. There's a very reasonable approach to that based on internal, metrics, demand in the market, and those type of things. And I think that's, I think everybody has a method to that, but I think that has helped the industry grow in a way that has. It's only helped the industry, in my opinion.
Sure.
And you've been in the driver's seat of a lot of that. So when you think back on your career, leading Telex, now leading Flexential, you're in the financial industry before that. But like from a leadership standpoint, who has had an impact on you along the way to kind of help guide your career, help guide the way you think as a business leader? Who's made a difference from a business standpoint for you?
Yeah, well, I don't think there's necessarily been one. I was a fairly young CFO when I jumped in the operating world. So, and I'd say the first CEO that I worked with, a gentleman by the name of Randy Fowler, who was a very dynamic, leader, and really what I got out of my time working with him is just the passion that he was able to infuse into the organization. And really the organization rewarded him with just solid execution and commitment and trust and so forth. And then, I'd say in my Telex tenure, I worked with Eric Shipcaro, who a lot in the industry know, and he approached the challenge and the opportunity with a tenacity, I'd say, like no other, and just had a kind of a infectious conviction, if you will.
Sure.
And so it was great to be able to work with him as well. And, and then I'd say, I've had the opportunity with a multitude of private equity firms that I've had the opportunity to work with, GI Partners, Abry, and Berkshire. There's just, there are great leaders in each one of those institutions, if you will, that have just got this great perspective
Sure.
across a whole host of companies and technologies, and having the opportunity to get their perspective has been awesome.
Yeah, I bet. And I think it's huge, especially as you sit in that seat today and you look to grow your company. Just your background, I think is always the background of leaders. I think is always really interesting. How they think, how they execute. How they treat people within the organization. So thanks for sharing that. That's good. Okay, so when you think about the next 5 years in the space, you all are poised to serve existing customers, grow hopefully with new customers. But what gets you most excited about having a large platform in the data center industry?
Yeah, well, having a large platform, gets me excited. I think that scale, I think, begets opportunity and more scale, and so. In a lot of ways, this combination will open the aperture to a lot of things that neither legacy company would have had the opportunity to explore. And so, very, very excited about that. I think, when I jumped out of Telex, I got back into I'd say the industry fairly quickly, just because I think the industry is moving very fast, but it's still very much early innings. And what really makes me have confidence in that is, I've got a 10-year-old daughter at home, and the way that her and her friends interface with technology is in a manner that, quite frankly, I don't think we have ever seen before. And so, what they're going to what requirements they're going to be putting on, IT solutions that support, their expectations, I think is going to present things to this sector, which are going to be challenges, but there are going to be awesome opportunities that we don't even kind of see yet. So, that being said, we need to continue to make sure that we're keeping pace with all of that, and making the requisite investments both in facilities, but also capabilities to make sure that we're hopefully one step ahead of those requirements. But really, I think there's just a whole lot of great things to come. Yeah,
that's good. And we'll just end with this, but one thing it's always interesting from a leadership standpoint is to hear just how competitive leaders are in their space, and so we talked before, but you mentioned playing rugby growing up or into your college days. But tell me about why you like that sport. What it's taught you, and then I know it sounds like you'll watch rugby games, but tell me about that and your involvement there.
Yeah, well, as we discussed, played in college and played a bit after, and really enjoy watching it today.
Yeah.
I wouldn't dare play it today because I'm not sure I would make it through. But I think the rugby, for those that don't necessarily know it, it's kind of kill the guy with the ball. But there's actually a whole lot of strategy and intelligence that goes into winning in that sport. So. For those that do understand it, you actually advance the ball by passing backwards, and so you really have to think about if you get tackled and lose the ball, that's actually not a good thing, and because it gives the opportunity for the other team to really take over. But so very physical sport, but a whole lot of strategy. And I think it's that strategy that really kept me very interested and continues to. And I think the sport itself has just advanced in terms of its audience. And so it's becoming much more appreciated globally, and that's just awesome.
And man, so best game you've ever been to? What's a memorable? I mean, you'll go occasionally and watch rugby events now, correct?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been trying to, there's what they call rugby sevens, which is a very fast-paced version of the sport that gets played every year in Vegas, where literally countries from around the world come. So you have like Samoa and Fiji and New Zealand, and these guys and girls are monsters. So it's very fun. So for anybody that has the opportunity, they should do that. But a couple months ago, I had the opportunity to go to Dublin to see one of the Six Nations games, and that was just tremendous because I'd never been to a rugby match where there were as many people as there in the stadium as there are in American football.
So
you bet. You walk in and 60,000 people and everybody just from multiple countries that are just really excited to be there. And the one thing that I remember from the game which is different than I think from American football, clearly. But there's an equivalent of like a field goal after you score, and in this match, basically when the kicker's getting ready to kick the ball, the entire stadium goes silent.
Oh, gosh.
So no heckling, no yelling at the kicker, and it's 60,000 people that just go quiet.
Interesting.
And it's kind of like, whoa, I've never seen this.
So that's out of letting him kick out of respect for him being able to kick the ball.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting.
And
certainly not
happening
happening in American football.
It's just a little bit different, but
that's good.
It was very it was really a bucket list thing.
Yeah, I bet. Well, thanks for sharing that. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming in and doing this, and I really am excited to see Flexential over the next several years and see how the company continues to grow, serve existing customers, and expand into different markets. So thank you for being here, and good luck in the future.
Great. Thanks a lot. This was awesome.